There comes a moment when you've exhausted all your options while simultaneously coming across a product that reinvents your notion about what an honest and high-quality company looks like. The Healing Rose was the catalyst to that very moment for me. The Healing Rose Company is a female-owned Massachusetts CBD company based out of Newburyport that prides themselves in using only the best USDA-certified organically sourced ingredients for their vast line of therapeutic products. Their line stretches from lip balms, tinctures, skin balms, roll-on oils, and bath products. Their transparency places them above the rest with third-party tested results showcasing their intolerance to toxic pesticides, solvents, metals, and harmful elements. They provide full-spectrum CBD in many of their products, excluding their tinctures, which carry a broad-spectrum profile, ideal for not having to worry about any low-level THC, which is common for many CBD products. That one's my favorite, and it's good on the palate. Full-spectrum means that they extract from the hemp plant an array of different therapeutic cannabinoids along with CBD and their profile terpenes. The combination results in a greater outcome of healing and relaxation for any individual's needs. Whether you are an athlete looking for any recovery advantage, a patient in need of some relief to remind yourself that you are still a warrior, or someone who sees the frontiers of life with a little reserve and want to calm the mental storms that keep you from personally exploring, the Healing Rose CBD Company is here for your full body and mind optimization. Please visit thehealingroseco.com to explore their diverse line of products and support one of New England's best rising stars in an industry where ethics are fundamental, and a company like this will only be found sitting at the throne of it all. Use the code SAGAS, S-A-G-A-S, for 10% off your purchase. Again, visit thehealingroseco.com and use the promo code SAGAS at checkout for 10% off your purchase. To the many martial artists, entrepreneurs, dreamers, and thinkers, how often, for your own sake, would you love a symbolic reminder of your mentality and the perfect dichotomy to match? Murder Nerd is an independent clothing apparel line that represents the sharp, relentless focus towards personal growth and athletics. It embodies the vitality of their creative owners and the network of people who run on the same frequency. Why not elevate your frequency in comfort and style? Visit www.murdernerdsfitness.com for their personal line of shirt and hat wear. Enter the promo code SAGAS, S-A-G-A-S, for 10% off your purchase. Again, visit murdernerdfitness.com and enter the promo code SAGAS for 10% off your purchase. What is going on? Here we are. Oh, where are we? What are we doing? I keep pressing the wrong buttons. All right, so let's see. I'm in a little bit of a ranting mood here. So this might be kind of quick. Let's see here. But I'm trying to be prepared for this. So, you know, what I need to kind of underscore this whole thing with is just like good intentions, right? I think I've had to say this before. Good intentions all around, doing my very best to explain myself in a way through a position that doesn't get hijacked and corroded by any possible assumption of where this opinion is coming from, or how it's flavored, or how it's manipulated, or any of that. Because, and I'll get to it, but I think that thinking in that way is like such a huge fucking problem lately. So I'd say, let's see. All right, let's back it up. Let's just fly through this, right? We go through the pandemic, right? We're still going through it, obviously. At some point, there's talk of something called hydroxychloroquine, right? Blah, 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 blah. It comes out of the mouthpiece that represents our country, unfortunately, and he's incredibly triggering, and whether you like him or not, objectively, it seems like there's a constant hit piece on this guy. He's not a nice guy. He's definitely said some things I wouldn't say. He's definitely gone about a lot of things in a way that would be very clunky, and unfortunately people have to dig to kind of find the correct intentions in like what he's saying, and that's just a result of being somehow a bad speaker. I don't even know how he's a bad speaker. I don't get it. To get where he is, I don't understand it. I guess he's an incredible con man. I don't know. But I recognize a hit piece when I see one, right? Like, you can see it. And I only say that because it's like, there's just so much conversation around this fucking guy and so many things going on, but nothing seems to surface. I'm waiting for him to go to jail for some tax shit. I'm waiting for him to get impeached over these allegations. I'm waiting for all of these, just all the slew of accusations, and like, I don't, you know, I'm just waiting. It's not that I want them to, but I'm waiting for them to just kind of materialize, and nothing ever does. So it's like, you can't call me foolish for just kind of putting up a question mark like, well, what is happening here? So whatever. Anyways, that's a longer, different rant, really. But at some point he mentions this drug. And everybody goes apeshit. They go against this whole thing. They say it's not safe. They say it doesn't work. All these contradicting papers come out, like the famous France study that talks about maybe the efficacy of this thing and how it actually might work. Whether the cohort of patients in this trial were small, it was still optimistic. We forget about it, we go through it, it gets buried just like everything else. So we get to, Christ, I don't even know. I don't even remember. Maybe the end of June or the beginning of June. Something where this video comes out, and this is one of a few videos, but this one video where it's the frontline doctors, right? They're all kind of trying to make their point that we should at least be allowed to bring questions to the table because of their own professional observation. And they're all in agreement. And they all know that this isn't going to be good for them if they're labeled quacks or if people invalidate them. You know, like, there's a lot to lose when you have a practice and you have all these licenses and you have a career and you come out in public to try to question something like this. Never mind on such a national stage. Like, there's a lot to fucking lose. So I'm just listening to this video, and obviously, 100% no shit, I'm not a doctor. But fortunately and unfortunately, I'm in a space and also in a circumstance where I'm constantly being inundated with a lot of different types of science literature. So I'm starting to understand different mechanisms, different lingo, and different deeper understandings of anatomy and just science and healthcare in general. So I'm not a total layman, but but I'm also have 0 degree in it. But I still have my own decent way of thinking of things, I assume. So I'm listening to these people and they sound reasonable. And this one doctor talks about hydroxychloroquine. And I'm just going to call it HCQ for now. So she talks about HCQ. But she doesn't just talk about that. She talks about using that along with another medication. I believe it's a Z-Pak or another antibiotic. And then zinc. This whole thing is based around a cocktail of 3 different compounds. HCQ, zinc, which is a huge player, and then the heck was it? The Z-Pak. So she brings this up, and not somehow, it's all the rage. Everybody's trying to watch this. I get it. They're scrambling for kind of comfort and like, all right, somebody's saying something that maybe we should contemplate, that leans towards the side of maybe giving us less fear and maybe figuring out what to do, what we can do for ourselves a little more, right? No one is saying fuck the masks and go party and get in a pool and make out with everybody. Nobody's saying that. They're just questions. So these are on the table. Within a day, this video is pulled. Can't find it anywhere. Can't find it on any social media. And then, the campaign that just gets repeated with all these videos is that it's not valid. It's illegitimate. These people don't know what they're talking about. This is politically driven. And unfortunately, this video was also shared by King Numbnuts. And that doesn't help the case at all. So then because of that, the campaign goes even harder. And, we dig into one of these doctors, and her background, to me, is crazy, right? She believes in all these demon things and all these really weird, whacked out stuff that I can tell come from like a certain sector of religion and theology in certain regions of the world. Not my cup of tea, not what I would utilize to build the lens in which I see the world through. Like, that's just not, it's not for me. But they use that against her actual gripe against a lot of what's going on when it comes to how to treat patients and what we can do for them, which is this cocktail of the antibiotic, zinc, and the HCQ together. Because everybody was talking about how HCQ wasn't safe and when I looked into what they were talking about, yes, there are certain situations where when you use the high dose HCQ on a patient, you can get certain types of side effects, right? Obviously, we have side effects for everything. Nobody gives a fuck when they give somebody a medication, because when they get a side effect, they just come back and they get a new one. But all of a sudden, we give a shit about this side effect. For one. For two, it's not even what this doctor's talking about. The doctor's not talking about a high dose HCQ for a patient. That's for a totally separate diagnosis. And those are very separate clinical trials. What she's talking about is a low dose that's not every day, that's in combination with one other medication and zinc. And the whole point of that is because the HCQ helps with a lot of inflammation when it comes to the lungs, along with the Z-Pak. But the zinc has a huge role in this because the zinc, you're depleted when you have an autoimmune disease of zinc. And as you age, you're depleted of zinc as well. And this is why people tell you to take vitamin C and zinc just in general for your immune system. So when you introduce zinc along with these two other compounds, the big mechanism that actually helps is the halting of the God damn it, my freaking brain. When this gets hot, man, I just lose it all. The replication. It helps with for allowing less replication of the RNA aspect of viruses. It's a very DNA-based mechanism. So because you get less replication, you get less severe symptoms. And you're supposed to take this at the very first stage. Some people would even say use it as a preventative on a very tapered, pulsating protocol, which means you don't take it every single day. So, we're applying too much of a medication in a way later stage and saying that it doesn't work when we're actually talking about something at a much earlier stage at a totally different dosage that's complemented with two other totally different compounds. Why is this so hard to understand? So then I'm like, all right, let me just look. I have all of my PubMeds, I have all my Science Directs, I have all my ResearchGate, I have all of my websites that I go to for scientific literature. Lo and behold, I find all of them there. I find Science Direct. What do we see in Science Direct? Science Direct. Does zinc supplementation enhance the clinical efficacy of HCQ to win today's battle against COVID-19? Huge article. Believe me, I read this. 100% in agreement that we should actually look at this and that it does help. And where these come from are the examples that some of these doctors were talking about. People keep talking about, well, this needs to be proven, this needs to be that. Well, I think the people that actually say we need to do this, we need to do that, have never looked into the process of actually getting, for one, a medication to the masses, and two, getting a therapy funded to get to the masses. So to get a medication, you're flirting with between like 7 to 10 years. And then you're flirting with at least the last 4 years of actually contracts and marketing and figure out who's going to take these up, how we're going to put this to market, the ways in which all these parties are going to actually get paid for. So half of the funding and half the research really comes down to who's making fucking bank on this thing. That is always how these medications work. And this is why it takes forever to get medications that you hear about that are in the pipeline. And when you start looking at other countries, for example, Japan, they have a 2 to 3 year outlook on these medications. And they're still going through phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, but cutting down the end leg of these phase 3s, which is all about the money grab, which is why Japan has so many more medications. And yes, you cannot agree with medications, but if you have a wider variety of them, you have more to choose from, which means you'll have a better chance of finding one that doesn't have side effects, instead of being held to only having 2 or 3 for your rare condition and being fucked because there's no funding, or because all the lobbies are going against each other trying to figure out who gets to patent what and this and when and how. It's all politics, and you pay for it. So like, if we're in a pandemic and we're in an emergency, but you want something that takes 10 years, then why would you not at least consider the actual evidence and literature that talks about the good anecdotal evidence, and then also clinical observations? How do you think clinical trials even start? How do you think pondering therapies and protocols even make it to a mainstream arena? You use clinical observations because doctors have the allowance to do off-label, I don't even want to call them experimental, but just not off-label, but something where they have control over combinations of either different meds and different ranges at different doses for certain diagnoses, for a certain diagnosis that doesn't call for these types of protocols or medications, right? And obviously that's a lot of pressure on a doctor. You don't want to hurt somebody, but you still get the allowance to do that. And you get the allowance to do that, but they also have the responsibility to further educate themselves in their discipline so that they know that these things have been used by their colleagues, so then they might actually introduce this into their practice. If you're with a doctor who doesn't care to go to conferences or keep up on literature, then you need a new one, because that's how it should be. And this is how you get more out-of-the-box thinking physicians and therapies. And in the end, for you, a better life, a better outcome. So, like, it's all there, but somehow, just talking about it, there's a red flag that goes up just because you have a question. You know, are you a QAnon person? Whatever the fuck that means. Are you a conspiracy theorist? Are you in line with Trump? Are you this? Are you that? All these massive anti-intellectual fucking leaps when you just ask the question. I get it. I do get it. That unfortunately, habits, you can recognize habits, which then all of them end up leading to a certain type of profile of person. It's easy, right? If you look at a certain type of voter, you can almost guess everything that they agree with and don't agree with. Unfortunately, that's weird and it's sad to me, but it's easy to. It's actually a part of just the way we judge and profile people. And I guarantee I fall into that, right? I'm in a few cults myself, believe me. But to not be able to ask the question and then to have conversations, because I've been having conversations with some people with this, and they have nothing to actually give back to me once I tell them, listen, this is just a question. Here is the literature from Science Direct. Here is the fucking clinical trial that's literally going on right now about the actual protocol. So if there's no validity in what we're talking about because she runs this whacked out church, then why is there a clinical trial right now? Why are people funding this? Why are we working towards this, right? Why does WebMD have literature on this? Why does ResearchGate have this? And then we have the PhD written literature that's published by Newsweek, the PhD from Yale, talking all about how we need to just do this. Here is the protocol. It's incredibly easy. And his frustration on the ban in all these states where physicians don't get to actually give out, no, not physicians, what is it? Pharmacists. Pharmacists are blocking certain doctors from being able to get this medication for their patient. Why are we putting a ban on this medication? The doctors are furious over this. I don't understand. I don't get it. And my thing is that I'm here. I'm on the ground. I'm just a regular person. So my gripe is not being able to actually have a good dialogue with people about this. It goes right away to, it's a horrible video. They're all quacks. None of them know what they're talking about. it's political, it's this, it's that. Yet no one has anything to actually counter what I'm saying and what I'm showing. All I'm showing is that there is question in whether or not this is a good thing, and it leans towards being good. And who's saying this? It's not just other idiots like me. It's other doctors, it's other researchers, right? I don't get why we're not listening to other professionals who just want to expand the conversation. Other MDs, other nurse practitioners, other fucking Nobel Prize winners. What's his name? Michael Levitt, right? He talks about just the bioevolution of this virus and how it's so strange and that the narrative is incorrect. Yet we don't highlight him ever anywhere on the mainstream, right? Is it because if we start embracing a new narrative that people will become more lenient with their behaviors and then more people will get hurt? Okay. I do understand that. And I do get that. But how long are we into this now? We're into this to a point where people are getting infected, but the mortality rate is actually not going up. So something is coming to fruition here, what's coming about are some of these opinions that some of these professionals had in the beginning here, which is something along the lines of, can we just look at how dangerous this thing is? And even if it is, can we look at these other therapies so that we can help our patients protect themselves instead of constantly inundating them with a bunch of half-truths through all these algorithms of news outlets that are just pumping fear into everybody, paranoia, people losing their jobs or either not being able to go back to work because they got kids and now can't go to fucking school. So who's going to watch them? Right? Like, yeah, wear the masks. But can we not throw one thing on top of that so that maybe our chances of getting it is less? So then we can have a little less fear and then maybe engage in the things that are important to human interaction, right? Because now what we're doing is we're all just kind of reverting back and regressing into just like getting back into social media, and we're all fucking screaming at each other, you know, because we're aggravated because our lives are all so different. So now we're taking up just like, you know, the hobby of just being aggravated and offended and all of this shit. Because we have nowhere to blow off the steam. We're just getting fucking pissed off at each other. And I know I sound pissed off right now, but it's because I'm just disappointed. I'm just disappointed that I am literally willing to change my mind, and I'm even more willing to have a controversial conversation that might have some hot takes and not be insulting, and hear it out and then move on, and we'll agree that we agree or that we'll agree to disagree, and we'll wish each other well. But I don't know why there's like an incapability of doing that. And even more, the incapability to actually let information come in and maybe put a little dent in the foundation of another opinion, right? If you're presented with facts and you're presented with good information that's not hostile, that plays into the alternative narrative, you can't just keep going back and saying the same stuff, right? There's a word, and I hope I'm using this right, but there's a word called like tu quo or something like that, where it's like when somebody tries to attack somebody's valid argument over something by bringing up past contradictions, right? Like, if this woman is right, then you're doing that by saying that her past and her other activities counter like a science-based way of looking at things. This chick isn't just some like voodoo witch, right? Your thoughts can cross over to many different things. This is why you can be a dedicated high-level athlete, or like an incredibly linear, high-frequency thinker in business, and achieve all this great wealth and all these different things, but they don't know better to like cheat on their spouses, right? Like the different lily pads of thinking. Some of them sink and some of them float. Not all of them are going to float. So because the ones sink, that means the ones that are floating, fuck them. Doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like, you know, and depending on your way of thinking, like, if, for example, and I don't know this, but if Bill Gates was religious, would we disregard all of the incredible tech work that guy's done through his whole career because you might believe that he believes in an entity that created the world a couple thousand years ago, right? And maybe I'm wrong, and maybe I'm not thinking about it deep enough, but this is how I'm trying to connect this. That's what we're doing to this person. We're destroying the point that she has, which has some substance to it and that you can actually explore. We're destroying that by bringing up the past. That's incredibly intellectually convenient to me. And I see it right away. And that's what everyone tries to do when I try to have this conversation. Think for your fucking self. Seriously. I'm okay with being wrong. I will be wrong. But combat my science with other science. I'm willing to take that. But I've looked at the other science. And all this is a lot of questions that in the end get answered with the answer leaning towards this protocol working and doing well, and that it's safe. You want to keep the public safe? Yes. So if this is safe, let's give it to the teachers. Let's get the teachers on it so that they're not so freaked out about going back to school. Let's give it to the nurses. Let's try it with the doctors so that they can feel a little safer in the emergency rooms and all these different places. Why are we not trying this? We're just sitting here waiting with our thumbs in our asses for the government to give us a vaccine, right? Oh shit. I guess this was longer than I thought. But it's like, you know, for a society that loves to harp on the patriarchal fucking hierarchies and all these different hierarchical systems that we want to, you know, demolish and smash down because of all of their aspects of suppression and oppression, like, this is one hierarchy, the healthcare hierarchy, right? We let the alphas on top dictate all of the information, yet no one gets to come in and question that, right? You want to raise your fist for all this other stuff, which is valid. This is another part too. Your anti-hierarchy mentality should cross over to everything. Obviously keep yourself safe through all of this, but for fuck's sake, man, try to think for yourself. And you don't have to be insulting. Nobody has to be insulting when you disagree, right? And I'm not saying that any of the conversations I've been in were insulting. They're actually very good. But I could just tell that they were holding on to something. Out of whatever. Out of fear of cracking their own belief. Or out of fear of looking foolish because of the things that I've just been talking about. Or the association to whacked out fucking people. Where it's like some of these opinions, they end up reaching the very edge of some other kooky person's beliefs, and they end up touching. So then they end up believing that. So now if you believe in that or want to question it in the same way, you're lumped in with fucking kooky kid over here. Right? And people are afraid of that. Or afraid that you're going to be associated in some fucking political thing. Think for yourself. Disregard all of those things. Because if you're decent and people know you, you'll be able to express yourself in a way that you can dismantle everybody's idiotic assumptions about you over just one question. Just one question. So, I don't know. I guess that's the rant. And I hope this doesn't piss you off. But if it does, good. Then let's have a conversation about it. Everything that you're going to assume about this question, I can tell you right now, does not apply to me. And if it does, tell me. And then maybe it does. And I have a blind spot in my thinking, which I have many, and maybe this is one of them. But I've looked at this in a pretty decent way. And I'm not foolish enough to fall for certain types of habits of thinking or any of this stuff. Like, you might think there's being in the middle on a lot of things is indecisive and you want people to pick their sides. And that, like, the idea of kind of like centrism is a waste of time. And you can think that. You can think that. But don't you want to be somebody who thinks about the nuances of everything, right? And comes to like a better understanding to the whole thing, right? Which in the end would get more people to agree, right? We're in this fucking country together, right? We're on this street together. We're in this house together. Find a way to just let people speak. And speak yourself. Don't censor yourself. You want to talk about it? Talk about it. And if you do a decent enough job, people might understand where you're coming from. They won't agree with you, but they'll understand where you're coming from, and you'll get to kind of sit back with yourself, knowing that you represented yourself well, and that you got out of this conversation not being labeled the things that they wanted to label you in the beginning of it. I don't know. That's it. Fuck it. Ooh, love you. Bye.